December 1941. Pearl Harbor has just been bombed. America enters World War II. The entire country mobilizes. Young men line up at recruitment offices across the nation. Eager. Angry. Ready to fight. Ready to prove themselves. Ready to defend their country against an enemy that attacked without warning. Among them stands Charles Buczynski. 20 years old. Lithuanian immigrant son. Coal miner from Pennsylvania. He's been working underground since age 10. 11 years breathing coal dust. 11 years in darkness. 11 years watching men die in cave-ins and explosions. 11 years that aged him far beyond his years. But Charles doesn't enlist out of patriotism. Not really. He enlists because war offers something the coal mines never could. Escape. A way out that doesn't look like running away. A legitimate reason to leave Pennsylvania. Leave the mines. Leave the poverty. Leave the future that seems predetermined and unchangeable. The recruitment officer looks at Charles. Sees a young man who looks 30. Hard face. Coal dust embedded so deep in his skin that scrubbing won't remove it. Hands scarred from sharp coal edges. Back already starting to curve from years of stooping in low mine shafts. The officer asks what Charles wants to do in the military. Charles says anything that keeps him above ground. Anything that lets him see the sky. Anything that isn't a hole in the earth. The officer nods. Says the Army Air Force needs gunners. Men who can handle stress. Stay calm under fire. Operate weapons while planes shake and fall from the sky. Men who won't panic when death comes at 30,000 feet. But there's a catch. Being a B-29 gunner has the highest casualty rate in the entire Air Force. Planes get shot down constantly. Men die every mission. Survival isn't guaranteed. Most gunners don't make it through a full tour of duty. 25 missions. That's the requirement. Most die before reaching it. Charles says he's been working in coal mines since he was 10 years old. He's seen men die. Crushed by cave-ins. Blown apart by gas explosions. Suffocated by bad air. Death isn't new to him. Isn't abstract. Isn't something that happens to other people. Death has been his coworker for 11 years. At least in a plane, you can see what's trying to kill you. The officer stamps the papers. Says report for training in 2 weeks. Charles leaves the recruitment office. Walks through town one last time. Says goodbye to people who won't miss him. Says goodbye to a life that was never really his. Says goodbye to the mines. In 2 weeks, he'll be someone different. Somewhere different. Training is brutal. Physical conditioning pushed to the limit. Weapons training on 50 caliber machine guns. Aircraft familiarization on the massive B-29 bombers. Learning to operate guns while the plane banks sharply and rolls violently. Learning to track targets moving at hundreds of miles per hour. Learning to load ammunition with frozen fingers at high altitude. Learning to function while absolutely terrified. The hardest part isn't physical. It's mental. They show training films of B-29s getting shot down over the Pacific. Show what happens when a plane takes a direct hit from anti-aircraft fire. Show bombers exploding in midair. Show parachutes that never open. Show men burning. Falling. Dying. They show this to prepare the gunners. To make them understand exactly what they're volunteering for. Charles watches without flinching. Watches men around him get sick. Get scared. Drop out of the program. But Charles has seen worse in the coal mines. Watched his father's body pulled from a collapsed shaft. Watched friends suffocate. Watched men crushed by machinery. War might be hell. But he's already been to hell. This is just a different version of what he already knows. He graduates training at 21 years old. Gets assigned to a B-29 crew. 10 men total. Pilot. Co-pilot. Navigator. Bombardier. Flight engineer. Radio operator. 4 gunners including Charles. They're all young. All scared. All pretending they're not scared. They train together. Fly practice missions. Learn to work as one unit. Learn to trust each other with their lives. The pilot is a Texan named Jackson. He's 24. Older than most of the crew. More experienced. He's flown transport missions in Europe before. Knows combat. Knows what they're heading into. He looks at his crew during their first briefing. Sees boys pretending to be men. Sees fear hidden behind bravado. Except for Charles. Charles doesn't pretend. Just sits quietly. Waits. Ready for whatever comes. Jackson asks Charles about his background during a break. Charles mentions the coal mines. Working since age 10. Jackson asks if Charles is scared of flying into combat. Charles says no. Says flying is freedom. Even flying into combat. Even flying toward possible death. Because at least in a plane, you're above ground. At least you can see the sky. At least if you die, it's not buried in darkness underground. May 1943. The crew ships out to the Pacific Theater. Their base is Saipan. A tiny island that will serve as their launching point. From here, they'll fly bombing missions deep into Japanese territory. Target military installations. Industrial sites. Strategic bombing designed to cripple Japan's ability to wage war. Each mission takes approximately 14 hours. 7 hours flying to target. 7 hours flying back. If they make it back at all. The first mission is scheduled for early June 1943. The crew briefs at 4 in the morning. Still dark outside. Cold despite being in the tropics. Everyone quiet. Thinking about what comes next. Thinking about those training films. The planes exploding. The men dying. Wondering if today is the day they become another statistic in this brutal war. They take off at 6 a.m. 10 B-29 bombers flying in tight formation. Flying low initially to avoid Japanese radar detection. Then climbing steadily to 30,000 feet once past the early warning systems. At 30,000 feet, the temperature drops to 40 degrees below zero. The air is so thin that oxygen masks are absolutely necessary. The plane rattles constantly. Metal stressed far beyond normal design limits. Everything feels fragile up here. Charles is assigned to the tail gun position. The very rear of the aircraft. The most exposed position on the entire plane. The first target for Japanese fighters that attack from behind. The hardest position to escape from if the plane goes down. Statistically the most dangerous job on the most dangerous aircraft in the most dangerous war ever fought. But Charles doesn't think about statistics. Just scans the sky constantly. Watches for approaching threats. Waits. The approach to target goes smoothly. No enemy fighter spotted. No anti-aircraft fire. They're flying at 30,000 feet. Higher than most Japanese defenses can effectively reach. Higher than most enemy fighters can climb. Relatively safe. Or so they believe. The bombardier releases the full payload. The plane lurches upward suddenly as 10 tons of bombs drop away. Mission accomplished. Time to turn around and head for home. That's when everything changes. Japanese fighters appear. A new model that can climb to 30,000 feet. 6 of them approaching fast from multiple directions. The pilot sees them on his instruments. Immediately calls out their positions to the crew. Tells all gunners to prepare for engagement. Charles swings his twin 50 caliber guns toward the approaching fighters. Tracks their movement. Waits for them to enter effective range. Waits for the order to open fire. The Japanese fighters open fire first. Tracer rounds light up the sky like deadly fireworks. Red streaks cutting through the thin air. Bullets punch through the B-29's thin aluminum skin like paper. The sound is absolutely incredible. Like violent hail on a tin roof, but infinitely louder and sharper. Charles feels the entire plane shudder from multiple impacts. Feels rounds striking all around him. Feels the aircraft dying piece by piece. He returns fire. The 50 caliber machine guns roar even through his heavy flight helmet. Vibration travels up his arms as hundreds of rounds pour out. He tracks the nearest fighter carefully. Leads the target. Compensates for speed and distance. Fires sustained bursts. Sees his tracer rounds reach out across the sky. Connect with the enemy plane. One fighter immediately trails thick black smoke. Breaks off from its attack run. Falls away toward the ocean far below. The engagement lasts exactly 3 minutes. Feels like 3 hours. 2 B-29s in their formation go down. One takes a direct hit to its fuel tanks. Explodes instantly in a massive fireball. 20 men vaporized in less than a second. The other bomber loses its entire tail section. Begins spinning wildly. Falls. Charles watches it go. Counts parachutes deploying. 6. 4 men didn't make it out in time. 4 men falling 30,000 feet right now. 3 minutes to hit the ocean. 3 minutes of absolute terror knowing death is inevitable. The surviving aircraft break formation. Every plane for itself now. Running desperately for safety. The Japanese fighters pursue aggressively. One more B-29 takes severe hits. Engine catches fire. Can't maintain altitude. Starts descending slowly. They might make it back to base. Probably won't. Most likely will crash somewhere in the vast Pacific Ocean. Another crew lost to this brutal war. Charles's plane barely makes it back. One engine completely dead. Hydraulics failing badly. Fuel tanks punctured and leaking precious fuel. They land extremely hard. Skid dangerously off the runway. Stop just short of the trees at the runway's end. Everyone sits in complete silence for a long moment. Alive. Somehow still alive. Against all odds and logic and everything they just experienced. They finally climb out on shaking legs. Walk around the aircraft slowly. Inspect the extensive damage. Begin counting bullet holes systematically. 73 holes total. 73 separate points where death tried desperately to get in. One enemy round passed exactly 6 inches from Charles's head. Close enough to hear it screaming past. Close enough to feel the air displacement. 6 inches separating life from death. 6 inches between going home and becoming another casualty statistic. The crew chief examines the damage carefully. Shakes his head slowly. Says this particular aircraft won't fly again for at least a week. Needs far too much repair work. The crew is officially grounded. 7 full days to process what just happened. 7 days to think constantly about the men who didn't make it back today. 7 days to mentally prepare for the next mission that will inevitably come. Charles doesn't talk about what he saw up there. Doesn't process it with the chaplain or the flight surgeon or his crewmates. Just goes directly to his small bunk. Lies down fully clothed. Stares at the ceiling for hours. Thinks about the coal mines back in Pennsylvania. Thinks about watching men die underground in darkness. Thinks about how death in a plane is somehow faster. Cleaner. More honest. You see it coming. You understand what's happening. The missions continue relentlessly. Second mission. Third. Fourth. Fifth. Each one essentially the same brutal pattern. Take off before dawn. Fly for long hours. Drop bombs on target. Fight desperately for your life. Limp back home if you're lucky. Count carefully who's missing from the formation. The casualty rate remains absolutely brutal. 1 in every 4 B-29 crews don't complete their 25-mission tour. 1 in 4 dies. Gets shot down. Crashes. Disappears forever over the Pacific. By September 1943, Charles has completed 10 combat missions. He's 22 years old now. Looks 40. The constant stress takes its toll. The sleep deprivation. The ever-present fear. The accumulated trauma. It ages everyone prematurely. Changes them fundamentally. The crew he originally trained with is now half gone. Replaced by nervous new men. Young men. Scared men. Men who probably won't last either. Jackson, the pilot, notices Charles has changed significantly. Grown much quieter. More distant. More intensely focused. Jackson asks privately if Charles is holding up okay. Charles says he's fine. Jackson says nobody is actually fine after 10 combat missions. Everyone eventually breaks under this pressure. Everyone has a personal limit. How is Charles really doing? Charles says the missions remind him powerfully of the coal mines. Same exact feeling. Same deep understanding that today might be the day you die. Same grim acceptance that you can't really control it. Can't prevent it. Can only do your assigned job and desperately hope luck favors you. Same knowledge that men die constantly and the work simply continues regardless. New crews replace dead crews. New miners replace dead miners. Life goes on. Death goes on. Nothing ever stops. By January 1944, Charles has flown 20 dangerous missions. 20 separate times into combat. 20 times watching friends and crew members die horrible deaths. 20 times counting fresh bullet holes in damaged aircraft. 20 times wondering if the next mission finally ends everything. The Air Force officially requires 25 missions for a complete combat tour. Just 5 more missions to go. 5 more chances to die before earning the right to go home. Mission 25 finally arrives in March 1944. The final required mission. Complete this one last flight and the tour officially ends. Complete this and Charles gets to go home. Back to America. Back to relative safety. Back to some kind of normal life. 24 missions already survived. Just one more to go. One more gauntlet to run. One final test to pass. But the number feels ominous. Like tempting fate. Like broadcasting to death exactly when to strike. Everyone knows the grim superstition. Men frequently die on their very last mission. Their accumulated luck simply runs out right before the finish line. The final mission goes badly from the start. Heavy anti-aircraft fire from 20 miles out. Thick black clouds of deadly shrapnel everywhere. Planes taking constant hits. Then 15 Japanese fighters hit them in a coordinated ambush. The sky erupts into absolute chaos. Tracers in every direction. Planes maneuvering desperately. Guns firing continuously. Pure chaos and terror. One enemy fighter makes a head-on suicide run directly at their aircraft. Straight at them. Not breaking off. Not deviating at all. Machine guns blazing. Getting closer every second. 200 yards. 100 yards. 50 yards. Everyone braces for impact. For death. The fighter breaks away at the absolute last possible second. Rolls violently. Passes directly underneath. So close they actually feel the turbulence from its passage. So close they can see the enemy pilot's terrified face. The fighter circles back around. Coming again. This time Charles is completely ready. Tracks it from the very first approach. Leads it carefully. Fires sustained bursts. The rounds hit solidly. Wing. Fuselage. Cockpit. The enemy fighter shudders violently. Begins trailing thick smoke. Loses all control. Spirals downward. Falls away. Disappears into clouds below. Third fighter Charles has personally killed. Third life he's directly ended. Third man who won't ever go home to his family. The formation finally makes it back. All remaining aircraft land safely despite extensive damage. Charles's plane took 82 hits. 82 separate holes. 82 lottery tickets that somehow all came up winners. The crew climbs out slowly. Silent. Completely exhausted. But alive. Still alive somehow. Jackson finds Charles on the tarmac. Says congratulations. 25 missions completed. Tour officially finished. You survived. You made it. Charles just nods slowly. Doesn't feel victorious at all. Just feels completely empty inside. Feels like he should be happy. Should be celebrating. Should feel relieved. But all he feels is profound numbness. He goes back to his bunk. Sits on his rack alone. Thinks about everything he's seen. 25 missions total. Approximately 350 hours of actual combat flight time. 56 aircraft shot down that he personally witnessed. Probably 400 men dead. Men he knew personally. Men he didn't know. Men whose names he learned. Men whose names he never knew. 400 lives ended while he watched helplessly. Charles Bronson was discharged in April 1944. 23 years old chronologically. Looking 35. Returned to Pennsylvania. To the town he'd left. To people who hadn't seen what he'd seen. They treated him like a hero. Thanked him for his service. Asked about the war. Wanted exciting stories. Wanted heroics. Wanted glory and adventure. He didn't tell them anything real. Didn't talk about what he actually saw. Didn't mention planes exploding. Men dying. Fighters he killed. Just said it was hard. Said he's glad it's over. Said he wants to move forward with his life. They didn't understand. Couldn't possibly understand. They weren't there. Didn't see. Didn't experience. There's an unbridgeable gap now. Between people who've experienced war and people who haven't. A distance that simply can't be closed. He tried going back to the coal mines. Lasted exactly 3 days. Couldn't do it. Being underground now felt completely different. Felt like being trapped. Like being enclosed in the tail of a damaged bomber. He had to leave. Had to be above ground. Had to see open sky. War had permanently changed that fundamental need. In 1946, someone suggested acting classes. The GI Bill would pay for it. He tried it without much expectation. Discovered something unexpected. Acting allowed him to access emotions he'd been suppressing for years. Let him process trauma through performance. Let him be someone else temporarily. Someone who hadn't killed 3 men. Someone who hadn't watched 400 die. The war experience shaped absolutely everything about his acting career. The stillness he brought to every role. The quiet intensity. The complete refusal to perform emotion theatrically. The deep understanding that real danger doesn't look dramatic. Doesn't feel theatrical. Just is. Just exists. When casting directors said he was too hard, too intense, too serious, he understood exactly why. War had made him that way. Had made him see through artificial performance. Had made him value authenticity over everything else. The constant rejections never broke him because war had taught him the most important lesson. That survival is what truly matters. That today's failure simply means you're still alive to try again tomorrow. That as long as you're still breathing, you get another chance. This perspective, this understanding born directly from combat, made him resilient in ways other actors simply couldn't match. 20 years later, when directors desperately wanted authentic tough guys for films about war and violence and men under extreme pressure, they found Charles Bronson. The man who flew 25 death missions at age 23. The man who killed 3 enemy fighters in combat. The man who watched 400 men die. The man who learned at 30,000 feet that authenticity matters infinitely more than performance. At age 23, Charles Bronson flew 25 death missions in World War II. What he saw at 30,000 feet changed him forever. Gave him perspective that eventually turned rejection into persistence. Turned trauma into art. Turned survival into success. Made him incapable of faking what he knew was absolutely real. Made him the perfect actor to play men who've seen too much and somehow survived anyway. The war ended in 1945. But what Charles Bronson learned in those 25 missions never ended. It stayed with him. Shaped him. Defined him. Made him who he became. A man who couldn't pretend. A man who could only be completely real. A man whose authenticity came from surviving what most people never experience and carrying it forward into a legendary career.